There was a poor lad named Jack, who spent his time walking the roads, travelling from there to here, doing what he could. And one day, as he was walking along, he came to a crossroads, and there he met a fine gentleman, smart pointy beard, red waistcoat, who walked along with him and talked to him quite friendly. And after they'd been going for a while, the gentleman stops and says to Jack, "You seem a nice lad, Jack," which was true. He was a warm and friendly youth. "And I like your face." He was good looking too. "And I've got a gift for you." And he produced a coat, seemingly out of nowhere, and showed it to Jack. "This is a fine coat," he says, "but it's a special coat too. If you put your hand in the pocket, you'll find some money. And if you pull the money out and put your hand in again, you'll find more money. Every time you put your hand in the pocket, you'll find money. Now I'll give it to you, but there's one condition. If you put the coat on, you must keep it on for a year and a day. Not cut your hair, not shave, not wash, not change any of your clothes. And at the end of a year and a day, I'll come back and see how you're getting on." So what do you think, Jack? Is that a deal? Well, Jack thought, unlimited money in return for not washing and not changing your clothes for a year and a day seemed almost too good to be true. "Yes," said Jack. "So it's a deal," said the fine gentleman, "and we can shake hands on it." "Yes," said Jack, and they shook hands, and Jack took the coat and walked on down the road. But once he'd given him the coat, the fine gentleman turned round and went back the other way. And when Jack looked back a few minutes later, he'd vanished. But Jack carried on. He carried on walking from there to here, from here to there. But now, each night when he stopped, he could eat well and sleep in comfortable lodgings. But most of the money Jack took from the coat he gave away, because he was a generous lad. And if he came across someone who was in need because they had no work, or because of illness, or because somebody had died, he'd put his hand in his pocket and see them all right. Well, one day he came across a man who had no work and had no money for his rent, and was afraid that his family would be thrown out in the cold. "No worries," said Jack, put his hand in his pocket, pulled out the money, said this should cover it, and gave it to the man. Well, of course, the man was very pleased and very grateful, and invited Jack to come and eat with them and stay over. This was a better offer than you might think, because by now Jack had been travelling with his coat for several months, not changing his clothes, not washing, not shaving or cutting his hair, and he looked horrible, and he smelt worse. But the man invited him in, took him back to his house, and introduced him to his 3 daughters. Well, the 2 oldest daughters didn't want to have anything to do with this monstrosity. But the youngest daughter, called Rosie, who was a kind and valiant girl, she was prepared to talk to him. And when she did that, she discovered what a nice lad Jack was. And he had a lot of interesting stories about things he'd seen on the road when he was travelling from there to here and from here to there. And Rosie was a bright and interesting girl, very nice too. And they fell into conversation. And after they'd been talking to each other for most of the night, they started to fall in love. Things happen quickly in these stories. But Jack was worried, and he had been worried for some time, about this deal that he'd made. Unlimited money in return for not changing your clothes and not washing for a year and a day. It seemed too good to be true. And his gran had always told him that if you come across a deal that's too good to be true, then it's not true. And he was worried about what he'd let himself in for. So he thought he needed to travel some more and find out more about this deal, what the consequences might be. So he set out to leave the house, but before he left, Rosie took one of her rings and broke it in half, gave him half and kept half for herself, as a sign of their love. And Jack went on down the road, from there to here, from here to there, came to a town and went to see the wise woman. And he told her about what had happened, about the deal. He showed her the coat, put his hand in the pocket, brought out some money, gave her some. And the wise woman said, "This man that you met, did you meet him at a crossroads?" "Yes," said Jack. "You have a pointy beard and a red waistcoat?" "Yes," said Jack. "And his boots, did you notice his boots?" "Well," said Jack, "he had fine boots, but they were of funny shape. They weren't really foot shape. They were sort of round and wide. The kind of boots that might fit hooves rather than feet," said the wise woman. "Yeah," said Jack, "I guess so." "And did you shake his hand when you made the deal?" said the wise woman. "Yeah," said Jack, "I did." Says the wise woman, "You've made a deal with the devil, Jack. And when he comes back at the end of the year and the day, he'll be back for more than his coat. He'll want your soul as well." "Oh," said Jack, "what can I do?" "Well," she says, and she gives him a circle made out of hazel wands plaited together, a hoop. And she says, the circle is a magic shape. It's got no beginning, no end, no corners, and only one edge. And if you're inside the circle, the devil can't do you any real harm. So what you need to do is to put yourself in the devil's way. And if you can last for a whole night, from dusk to dawn, without paying him any attention, without responding to anything he does, reading your Bible and concentrating on the holy words, he will lose his power over you. "Right," says Jack. "So, go up to the woods tonight, take your Bible, stand in the circle, and whatever happens, don't look up, don't listen, don't pay attention. Keep reading, keep concentrating on the Word of God, and you'll be okay." Okay, so Jack goes up to the woods, puts the circle down, stands in it, takes out his Bible, and as the sun goes down, he starts to read. "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." And the first thing that happened was that a fly arrived. Because some of the things of the devil are not big things at all, but little things. And this fly buzzed round him and tickled him horribly. But he paid no attention. He didn't look up. He stayed focused on his Bible, and he kept reading. Next there arrived a bee, and the bee buzzed in his ear and said, "I've come to sting you." Now this could have been worrying, because Jack was allergic to bee stings. And the bee buzzed, "Got your EpiPen with you, have you?" "No?" "Ooh, tough," and buzzed around. But Jack ignored him, focused on his Bible, kept on reading, and the bee went away. Next there came a roaring and a crackling noise all around him, and flashing lights, as though he was in the middle of a great fire. But Jack didn't look up, kept his eyes on his Bible, and kept on reading. This kind of thing kept happening all night, being harassed one way or another, but Jack kept on reading. Though sometimes what he was reading was very boring. "These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood, and Shem lived after he begat him 500 years and begat sons and daughters. And Arphaxad lived 35 and begat Salah, and Salah lived 30 years and begat Eber, and Eber lived 34 years and begat Peleg, and Peleg lived 30 years and begat... It was very boring, and Jack got very tired, but he kept going, and he kept concentrating. Now you might think that Jack was able to read the words of the Bible because the pages were illuminated by some kind of heavenly glow, but no, that wasn't the case. He could carry on reading in the dark because the wise woman had lent him a head torch. If you're going up against the devil, you need the right equipment. So it started to become light, and when the sun came up, Jack stopped reading at last and looked up, and all was quiet around him. And he put his hand in his pocket. There was nothing there. He was free. So he went back into town, bought himself some new clothes. Although he'd given away most of the money from the pocket, he had kept some in case he might need some later. And he went to the bathhouse, and he had a shower. Then he had a bath. Then he had another shower. And he sprayed himself all over with Lynx Africa, put on his clean clothes, and went to the barber's, had a shave and a nice trim. And he scrubbed up really nice. He was a fine-looking young man. And he went back to Rosie's house and knocked on the door. The father opened the door, and Jack says, "Hi, I'm back." "What?" "It's me, Jack." "Nah, you don't look like Jack to me. You don't smell like Jack to me." Lynx Africa, eh? Very nice. Now, if the real Jack was here, if he was anywhere in the neighbourhood, I could smell him. Nah. "Well," says Jack, "could you just call your daughter Rosie for me?" "Okay. Rosie!" "Yes, Dad?" "There's a strange man for you at the door." So Rosie came to the door, saw this really nice-looking young man, but she didn't recognise Jack. So Jack put his hand in his pocket, different coat, remember, and pulled out the half of the ring that she'd given him. She had the other half on a silver chain round her neck. "Oh, Jack, it is you." And she ran into his arms. Well, that's the end of the story, really. Everybody was happy, apart from Rosie's two older sisters, who didn't see why she should have such a nice-looking boyfriend. The devil had made a small investment and it hadn't paid off, but he wasn't too bothered. There'd be lots of other opportunities. Jack found that he'd had the same problem as he had with Rosie's dad. He'd transformed so much that nobody could recognise it, and nobody believed he was the real Jack. So he changed his name to Oscar and started up a new persona. And Oscar and Rosie took some of the money that Jack had saved and started up a business for themselves. A pizza restaurant, a hardware store, I'm not sure. And if they haven't died yet, they're still living.